Hello, my name is Marnita Harris, and I am Vice President of Economic Equity and Inclusion here at the Detroit Regional Chamber. I am happy to be here with Dennis W. Archer Jr., who is the chairman of 1642 Ventures, the parent company of several operating companies and strategic investments. One of my favorite is his Central Restaurant, Central Kitchen. I love Central. But we're here today to spend some time today to discuss why economic equity and inclusion is important to business. So I want to thank you for taking the time today to contribute to this series. And I want to talk to you about taking a moment to just talk about a bit about your background.
Well, thank you for patronizing Central. We appreciate your business and the Chamber's business there as well, and our longstanding partnership with the Chamber. But, just in brief, I'm a lawyer by education, having graduated from the University of Michigan, never actually endeavored to practice law in its formality, but have since leveraged the law degree and everything that I've done, which has included getting out of law school and going into real estate and municipal finance for several years, then migrating into the media space, where ultimately, prior to leaving, I was managing 3 radio properties here for a publicly traded radio company. And then in 2005, I went out on my own, having started Archer Corporate Services, which is a marketing services company. And that sits alongside, from an operating perspective, Ignition Media Group, which is a consultancy, and then 2 hospitality ventures, both Central Kitchen and Bar and the Vinyl Society, and then numerous other passive and semi-passive investments.
Why does economic equity and inclusion matter? Matter to you, matter to business, and matter to the Detroit region?
I would just say, if I look at it, in a microcosm, and, how I move, if you will, historically, from high school through college and law school to being a working professional. If you look at who my business partners are and the leadership of my businesses today, there's diversity everywhere. And, it starts with my dearest and closest friends are from all sorts of different ethnicities, different age groups. But we travel together, we do business together, we invest together, we bring our families together. And that is just always how I have personally moved. And it has made its way into how I do business. And because of, for me personally, how I was raised by my parents, again, the circles that I've kept, it's all been very much organic. I wish I could say that the diversity among my companies was mentally an intentional thing, but it just happens because that is just how me, my partners with whom I operate these businesses, move. If you look at Archer Corporate Services, our chief operating officer is from a Middle Eastern community. Our chief development officer is the woman. Our head of client services is the Indian brother. Our CFO is a woman. At Central, our general manager is an African-American gentleman. Our chef is a woman, the youngest female executive chef in Detroit. At the Vinyl Society, our general manager is Persian. And so, if you go across the board, and it's not just at the top, if you go down within those organizations, you'll find diversity across ethnic, gender preference, geographic, residents, etc. And so for me, it has not been intentional. It is very important. That is why, alongside Tammy and Sandy and you and others, that we started originally because of what happened with George Floyd, but have maintained and actually made this a permanent committee because the work continues to need to be done. But it is proven that
Yes.
Boards, publicly traded boards of directors, that have more than 50% women do better. Boards that have minority participation on their board, their governance boards, their stock price performs better. And you can go all the way down.
Mm-hmm.
But I think that if you look at commonsensically, if there's an opportunity to be taken care of, to be taken advantage of, or a problem to be solved, 10 62-year-old white men coming from a similar experience, same neighborhoods, public, private, or Catholic schools, went to 2 or 3 of the same colleges. It's a good old boys network. They got their whole crew working with them. They, most of the time, I don't want to paint with a overly broad brush, but I would submit to you that most of the time, those people are going to think about approaching the opportunity or solving the problem in the same way.
Correct.
Versus if you have people from different economic backgrounds, geographic backgrounds, racial and gender backgrounds, you're going to get a diversity in thought as it relates to solving the problem or taking advantage of the opportunity. And by the way, that could include a 30 or 40-year-old white kid, male or female, but they did not grow up with means, right, did not grow up and go to the same potentially private or Catholic schools or premier public school because of their neighborhood. But they could still be a white male in this particular instance, but not have that same background. And by definition, their life experience will then present them with different views for which to share about the opportunity or the problem. So I don't think that one could argue empirically that diversity on one's team, which brings diversity of thought, makes for a better organization. All of the facts prove that that is the case.
What advice would you give to a business leader or just the business itself hoping to get more engaged or how to implement processes and procedures in their thought process on how do they look at or engage in economic equity and inclusion?
I mean, first of all, I would say do it rooted in the facts. Don't do it because it's the right thing to do. Don't do it because George Floyd got murdered, live on camera. Mm-hmm. Do it because it's best for your business. Do it because, like I indicated, diversity in thought, diversity in staff management and board seats will make your company a more profitable company that will reflect more of the clients, particularly if you're in a consumer-facing business, the customers that you serve. It just makes good business sense, and that's why people should do it. And I think that as a leader, there are numerous books that have been written. There's a woman who wrote a book. She at some point was CEO of AT&T. I can't draw her name right now, mm-hmm. but she wrote a book about leadership. And in the book, there's 2 or 3 chapters that talk about and list all the facts that I've mentioned at mm-hmm. a 50,000 foot level about why a diverse business does better, performs better, generates better returns. And I think as a leader, if you understand that yourself, how you suggest, implement, roll out different initiatives within your business and the phraseology that you use, the rationale that you give will be rooted in those things that you've educated yourself about, the mm-hmm. facts. So when you tell your team, we're going to move to doing this, or we're going to implement that. And the reason that we are doing it is because these 10 companies did these 7 things, and they're all more profitable mm-hmm. because of it. Their revenue is increased, their cost structure is decreased, the profit is better. This is why we're doing this. Because oftentimes what happens is if someone way at the top just says whether it's the right thing to do in their mind or because mm-hmm. they think and they know within themselves it's good for the business, but they don't explain it and it gets pushed down through the organization, there will be some in the organization that will buy into it. There'll be others that will just automatically be against it. We see now there's kind of a rollback or a pushback against DEI initiatives. But in none of the explanations that I'm hearing are the facts being addressed. And so I think that if the leader pushes down through senior management and then goes down through the ranks, here a 2 or 3 page quick read, or better yet, here's a video from a TED Talk, or here's an interview from CNBC, something that has some weight, validity, and integrity to the information. Watch this. This is why we're doing it. Now people at least have an understanding, and it's not just about this Black person's taking my job. Right. This woman's been given a promotion over me and she's not as talented as I am. It's rooted in facts. It's objective. I try to take out subjectivity in all decisions that we make and share with the business. Can't take it out 100%, particularly in those areas that cause us to be creative, because that by definition is subjective. But most things we try to make objective decisions based upon empirical data and to share that with the broader team. And I think when you do that, then you begin to get buy-in.
Okay, and so my next question was, what do you think is missing? And I think you just answered that question. What's missing is the data and the metrics. What is missing? The question was going to be, what is missing in the current initiatives for economic equity and inclusion?
I think it's the data. I think we touched on it. You're right. I just think that even if you see the latest news stories, and when most recently Walmart announced the switch and how they're approaching or will no longer approach the DEI subject matters, the counter to it was how it's going to affect people economically, the employees, potential employees, etc. Nobody said, hey, Walmart, this could affect you economically, because the facts say when you are diverse, this happens, and when you're not, you don't perform as better. That was not any of the coverage. And so I think that if we focus on the facts, all business people, there are no business people that go into business to lose money. And there are no business people that are not interested in getting a greater return for their investors, shareholders, or for themselves if they're an independently held entity. And so to show and illustrate that considering some of these things, in fact, make you a better operating business, a more profitable business, I think goes a long way. So what's missing, not 100% missing, but I think we need more of is more talk just about the data.
Okay. So if you were, and we talked about a TED Talk right quick, if you were giving a TED Talk to, let's say we're having a TED Talk look at one of our events, and we wanted you to just get up and just give a piece of, not a piece, but overall advice around economic equity in business, what would you say?
I mean, I think we've touched on it pretty significantly. I think that in order to get buy-in on any decision, if we are going to move headquarters, if we are going to move the restaurant from one location to another, I would want to provide all of the data about how many people go in and out of that office building, what's the drive-by traffic, what's the foot traffic, who are the tenants in the building, what's their average salary, how many of those people can we expect to come into the restaurant in the new location. I would make a decision based upon data. I would share that with the team so everyone would be bought in, so that when customers say, hey, you're moving, the server can say yes, and here's why. It's no different here. If you as a leader want to embrace something, in this instance, we're talking about making sure you have equity across the board in your enterprise, share the data. The other thing that I will say is that, and I go back to the 30 or 40-year-old, white male who is much different in experience and thought oftentimes than if they grew up in a lesser affluent community, if the high school wasn't as well funded, and then they get somewhere with peers and maybe they were all Ivy League and they know each other. That person is equally, if not more valuable, because they're bringing a different life experience. Maybe they had to hustle harder. Maybe they had to work during school. Maybe they had to pay for their own school. Maybe they had to take care of a sick parent and go to school and have a job. And so those sorts of people, whether they're white, black, purple, or yellow, male or female or other, come with different life experience, which in its totality just gives us more perspective from which to draw to make decisions.
So I really want to thank you for taking the time to do this. I also want to just stop and take a moment and thank you for your leadership here at the Detroit Regional Chamber as a past chair of the board, the things you've done with us with Mackinac Policy Conference, and then also your leadership with the Economic and Equity and Inclusion Committee.
It is my pleasure. You can't get rid of me. I'm not going anywhere.
Well, I'm going to hold you to that. Now I have it on tape. So
it's on tape. It's official.
It's official. So I appreciate you so much. I appreciate your leadership, but as well as your partnership. I think you've been a good partner with me as I'm doing this work here at the Chamber, and I just really appreciate your insight and you're taking the time to do this interview and be a part of this series. So
My
thank
pleasure.
you so much.
Thank you. Thank you, Marnita.